Welcome to Mr. Holloway's Foundational Python Skills series. In this video, we're going to talk about Lambda functions. But before we get started, just wanted to remind you that if you liked the video, go ahead and give it a like, and please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. Let's get started, and class is now in session. Now, Lambda functions are anonymous, known as anonymous functions. They don't have a name. And in this video, I'm going to cover just kind of the basics of an anonymous function, also known as a Lambda function, as well as show the equivalent to what a regular function would look like as compared to a Lambda functions. Lambda functions are pretty much in every language. They're just done differently. So let's go ahead and get into it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a Lambda function. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable called, we'll just call it x, and we'll set it equal to Lambda. So we're going to create a Lambda function. And what we're going to do is we're going to put some arguments. So I'm going to say there's going to be 2 arguments that you need to put in this function. And then I'm going to do my colon, and this part is the expression. So what I want to do with those is I want to take those, and I just want to multiply them. Now the cool thing about the Lambda is that this, on this side, this is just going to automatically return, so you don't have to write the equivalent of a return. All right, so that is a Lambda function. So let's go ahead and print it out. So if we go print, and now this is where the function part comes in. I'm going to treat this variable like it's a function now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my opening and closing parentheses, and I'm going to put in 2 arguments. So I'll do 3 and 5. And that's because this A and B represents the 2 arguments that I need to put in there. And then what's going to happen is when I run this, it's going to return 15. And so these are the arguments that we just put in, and this would be what we're going to return. So it's the equivalent of the return statement. Now let's add another argument. So I'm going to say C, and then I'm just going to multiply that as well. Okay, and so now we're putting in 3 arguments, and then we're just going to multiply and return those numbers. And now let's see what happens when I run it now. So let's go ahead and just run it, and notice we get an error. It says it's a Lambda. It's a type error. It says missing 1 required positional argument, which would be understandable because we are saying, hey, we want to put in 3 arguments, so we need to put in that 3rd argument. And I'll just put in 2, and that will solve our issue here. And when I run, we get 30. And so that is the Lambda function. So let me write the equivalent of this function here. So the equivalent would be a named function, and so I could say def, and I'll just call it multiply. I could call it x. Actually, let's call it x, which is, by the way, a terrible name for a function, but I'm just going to write the equivalent. And so I'm going to do enter my parameters, because I am now working with a function definition, and so these are parameters on this side. And then I'm just going to return A times B times C. Okay, so this is the equivalent of this, except this is a Lambda function, this is a named function. And so now what I have to do is we're going to go ahead and run this, but we're also going to call the function too. So we're going to say x. And we got to put in our arguments. So I'm just going to put those in, and then let's go ahead and run. And then because of the arguments that I put in, 3, 4, and 5, we get 60, and then we get 30 here, which was this. So that basically is the Lambda function. Now it's important to remember just a couple of things. With the Lambda function, again, this is the expression, and this expression is automatically returned. So this part is the equivalent of this part in a named function. And then this part here is the equivalent of the parameters that we put here in a named function. And so that's pretty much it for this. I was just wanted to cover the basics of what a Lambda function is. I wouldn't overuse them. They're used in very specific circumstances. You could get away with not using them at all. But you will see them out there in the wild if you're looking at code. So it's important to understand at least how they work if you're not going to use them. But that is a Lambda function. So that concludes the video on Lambda functions. If you like this, go ahead and give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. I will see you in the next video. Class is now dismissed.